In the annals of history, few figures have captivated our imaginations quite like the enigmatic Queen Cleopatra of Egypt. Her legendary beauty, cunning intelligence, and undeniable charm have left an indelible mark on the sands of time. Prepare to be astounded as we journey back in time to uncover the astonishing and little-known secrets of one of history's most enigmatic figures, Queen Cleopatra. From exotic pets to political intrigue, these crazy facts about Cleopatra will leave you utterly captivated. The first thing you need to know about Cleopatra is that she does not have Egyptian ancestry. Cleopatra was born in Egypt. Nevertheless, her family tree can be traced all the way back to Ptolemy I Soter, who was one of Alexander the Great's generals. Ptolemy finally launched a dynasty of Greek-speaking monarchs that lasted for 3 centuries after he acquired control of Egypt after Alexander's death in 323 BCE. This dynasty lasted for 3 centuries. Cleopatra was not of Egyptian descent, but she was aware of the need of maintaining the appearance that she was not a foreigner to her people. As a result of this, she was the first member of the Ptolemaic line to study Egyptian and embrace a significant number of the old practices of the kingdom. Moving on, she has a very high level of intelligence. One thing about Cleopatra about which we can be absolutely confident is that while we do not know how stunningly beautiful she was, she had an extraordinary level of intelligence. It is thought that Cleopatra was a polyglot who was able to communicate in close to 12 different languages, despite Roman propaganda that portrayed her as an oversexed temptress. She received training in astronomy, oratory, philosophy, and mathematics throughout her education. According to the Arab historian al-Masudi, Cleopatra was a wise and philosophical person who elevated the ranks of scholars and enjoyed their company. In addition to this, he said that she had written a number of books on various topics, including medicine, charms, and cosmetics. In the piece of writing that she referred to as Cosmetics, she suggested remedies for both dandruff and hair loss. Another fact about Cleopatra was that she was born out of incest. There has been more than one royal affair in the past. Around 1400 years after Cleopatra, in order to maintain the integrity of their royal lineage, the Inca monarchs of the American continent engaged in the practice of incest. This was done for the purpose of preventing genetic defects. In point of fact, King Tut was a child of incest 1300 years before Cleopatra was born. This reality is still attested to by the distorted state of his physique. In the case of Cleopatra, a significant number of her predecessors tied the knot with their cousins or brothers and had children together. In addition, there is a good chance that her parents were really brothers and sisters in a previous life. Cleopatra herself married both of her brothers while they were still adolescents. During her reign, each of her brothers took turns serving as her ceremonial husband and co-regent at various points in time. In reality, the intermingling among blood relatives, especially when it involved access to the throne, was a legal necessity in ancient Egypt. The succession to the throne had always been handled in a matrilineal form, ever from the commencement of this particular dynasty's time of rule. Therefore, in order to become eligible for the throne, the kings were required to wed one of their sisters. Moving on, she did not hold back her ruthlessness. Incest was not the only Ptolemaic family custom. Power grabs and murder were also part of the Ptolemaic legacy, and Cleopatra did not hesitate to participate in these practices. As a direct consequence of this, she was directly responsible for the deaths of 3 of her siblings. After an unsuccessful attempt to seize complete control of the kingdom, she was forced to flee Egypt by her brother-in-law and husband, Ptolemy XIII, who had married one of her sisters. Both sides engaged in a civil war against one another, which ultimately resulted in the Battle of the Nile in 49 BCE. Prior to this conflict, Cleopatra formed an alliance with Julius Caesar, which ultimately paved the way for her triumph against her sibling. In the immediate aftermath of his loss, Ptolemy XIII was trying to escape the opposing army when he went down in the Nile and perished. After the conclusion of the civil war, Cleopatra, who was by this point a widow, wed her younger brother Ptolemy XIV. On the other hand, it is thought that she ordered his death in order to promote Caesarion, her son with Julius Caesar, to the position of co-ruler with her. Her half-sister Arsinoe IV, who was queen of Egypt and co-ruler of the country, with her brother Ptolemy XIII from 48 BCE to 47 BCE, was the last of the siblings to die either directly or indirectly at the hands of Cleopatra. She was the last of the siblings to die. In the year 47 BCE, Arsinoe played a crucial part in Cleopatra's campaign to lay siege to the city of Alexandria. Julius Caesar brought her to Rome as a prisoner of war after Ptolemy XIII was defeated in the Battle of the Nile. The battle took place on the Nile River. She was thereafter banished to the temple of Artemis at Ephesus in Roman Anatolia, where she remained until her death in 41 BCE at the hands of Mark Antony, who carried out the order of his girlfriend Cleopatra to have her put to death. Lastly, Cleopatra had the potential to be rather charming. We know that Cleopatra was slim, well-proportioned, and finely scented because ancient text describes her in these terms. She had the remarkable ability to switch gears from being a seductress vamp in one instance to an exceptionally bright politician in the next. Julius Caesar requested a meeting with Cleopatra when he summoned her brother-husband Ptolemy XIII in order to convince him to disperse his army. Ptolemy XIII was also Cleopatra's husband. The events of history make it plainly evident that as soon as the Roman military and political giant was in his 50s, he encountered the young Egyptian queen, he fell completely and utterly under her spell. The conqueror was completely subdued by a lady who could be crafty and brilliant at one moment and then behave as playful as a kitten the next. They began a romantic relationship that very same night. Caesar had fallen victim to a spell. It is quite likely that he would have wed the Queen of the Nile if he had survived the assassination that took place upon his return to Rome. Mark Antony of the Council was not an exception. Even though Cleopatra played hard to get at first, and even though she went all the way to Tarsus to avoid seeing him until she could do so on her own terms, Antony's destiny was already decided. When they did finally meet, the Roman soldier, athlete, orator, and famous lover became her slave. He was also the one who brought them together. It is reported that Mark Antony was mesmerized by Cleopatra's ability to present a new aspect of her personality on a daily basis. Cleopatra was shrewd in how she played her cards. She evaluated his capabilities and then used both his faults and his talents in order to incorporate his life into hers. She knew that Mark Antony was a seasoned gambler, yet she still played dice with him nevertheless. She was well aware of his passion for wine, and yet she continued to drink freely in his company. She would tag along with him on the streets of Alexandria in order to pull pranks on unsuspecting residents, since she was aware of his penchant for playing practical jokes. As a consequence of this, Antony surrendered his sword to her, only to end up burying himself next to her. Thank you for joining us on this captivating journey through the incredible life of Queen Cleopatra. If you enjoyed learning these crazy facts about her, don't forget to hit that like button, share with your history-loving friends, and subscribe for more fascinating content.